I read a little over 120 books this year, and in today's video, I want to go over the best of the best, the top of the top, the books that I gave 5 stars. I was going to talk about them in the order that I read them, but I figured talking about it genre by genre makes a lot more sense. So we're going to start off with romance. I continued on with my Magnolia Parks journey. I read Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home. This is the second Magnolia book. Wow, I knew it was 5 stars from the first page. I was giddy. My heart was racing, and I was unwell through the entire book in the best way possible. I just love the continuation of the story, and it just hurts, and it feels so good, and I can't get enough, and I just love them. And the writing, I'm sorry, it's unmatched. I don't know what she puts in these books, but there's so many quotes that just make me feel. It makes me feel, and I knew that it was a 5-star read when I was probably 8 pages in. And well, in all fairness, all I have to do is think about them and it gives me a 5-star feeling. But I think it was 8 pages in, and it was like the thought of them being in the same room again after a while had me giddy. Had me so giddy and unwell, and I'm gonna cry thinking about it. 5 stars from the beginning. And then I have 2 books. I read You With a View and The X-Files by Jessica Joyce this year. I cannot believe I was introduced to such an amazing author. I read You With a View first. It is following, let's just put this down to not make it confusing. It is following our 2 main characters where the female character, her grandmother passes away. That's like the prologue, it's on the back, that's off the page. And in the beginning, she finds a picture of her grandma and her belongings that is with another man from when she was younger, and they look so in love, and she's like, that's not my grandpa, so like, what happened? Grandma, where's your long lost love? So she puts it up on social media asking like, kind of a TikTok, do your thing, does anyone know this man? And the grandson comments and like, that's my grandpa. They meet up, and they learn that grandpa and her grandma planned a honeymoon road trip that obviously never happened. And so the 3 of them go on this road trip. It was so beautiful. I was crying like happy emotional tears 20 pages in, and I think I knew in that moment, like 5 stars, and it did not slow down. The romance in it was so well done. The beautiful moments of that older man and like the reminiscing of their like relationship in the early years and just love, and oh, it was so beautiful. So I knew when The X-Files was coming out, I had to pick it up, and this did not disappoint. This is following a trio friend group where these 2 are main 2 characters. They dated, they broke up, but they are still this trio of a friend group, and they're getting the band back together because the 3rd wheel, he's getting married, and everything is falling apart. So they want to do their best to make it the best wedding possible for him, and so they're having to team up as the maid of honor and best man, and they are just having to put out all of these fires. Now, in doing so, obviously they're getting a lot of alone time. They're having to deal with the fact that they still have emotions and attractions towards each other and just things that they need to talk about. And so this was so well done. Second Chance is so hard to do. I felt like this gave me a similar feeling to Happy Place, where it just made sense to me, where they broke up and it felt real. Like, it felt like that made sense. That can happen. I can see that happening. Versus like, if you just would have told her that one sentence, life would have been so much better. Like, those second chances are stupid. This, in my humble opinion, was not stupid. This was just so good and cute and beautiful and hot, and it was everything you need and more. I cannot believe that I read Love Theoretically for the first time this year. That is wild. This book is everything to me. Now keep in mind, my degree is in the physics area, and so this book's STEM genre is physics. Very easy for me to understand the science that was thrown into this versus her other books, but this was so cute and so perfect. I mean, Ali Hazelwood has not done better than this, in my humble opinion, because I've picked up her other books and none of them have hit like this book has hit. I love them. We have Elsie, and I want to make sure, and Jack. Yep, Elsie and Jack. You guys. The STEM setting's so good, and I learned that I need like the graduate students in a STEM setting. I cannot do like your 4-year bachelor degree college student romance. That's not for me. I can't see myself in their shoes. This, I'm like, oh, you're like my age, if not a couple years older. Like, there's hope for me. There is hope for me when I read this book. I love them. He is so perfect. He is so sweet. He is so kind. She is this very outgoing, independent woman. So smart. They're both so smart. Like, and they both love each other for it. Ugh. I loved it. I don't really think the main plot is necessary. It's an academic setting. There's going to be a bit of rivalry. You have a little bit of this fake dating shenanigans, and I quote, "It's amazing." Then I was also introduced to Abby Jimenez this year. I read Just for the Summer. I believe that this was my first Abby Jimenez book. And then after this, I was like, okay, I want to give her other books a shot. So this, nothing tops this. Nothing tops this. I am so excited to read her future work because I think she's just growing so much as an author and realizing like what works for her, what's working for her audience. This was so cute. Jimenez is a true talent. Blurred by Emily Henry. That's what this book is. It was so well done. It was a summer romance where these two characters both have a curse for whoever they date and break up with, their person finds their soulmate the next day kind of thing. Like their next partner is their soulmate. So me, myself, and I in that situation, so glad that everyone else is finding their soulmate, but what about me? So we have two people that believe they have the same curse and like, well, what if we date each other? Then we break the curse. Babes, that's not gonna happen. You guys are gonna fall in love. Like, spoiler, who's gonna tell them? Who's gonna tell them? But what I love about Abby Jimenez is she puts in such real world scenarios and like the heartbreak of real world scenarios into her books that just make it feel raw and real, and like I could live that. Like, am I a traveling nurse? No. But could I experience real life situations that make romance hard, that makes finding someone and building connections hard? Yes, that's what she does so well in her books. The last romance book I have to talk about is Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto, another new author for me. I love her. I love her writing. I love these characters. I love this book. Everything about it. I have never felt the way I felt for a book like this. Oh my god. They're perfect. They're perfect, and the writing was so beautiful. I've just never felt so much and so deeply, like, for characters in a world for this romance book. Like, I was just blown away by that, because when I rave about Beach Read and Happy Place, I'm raving about it because I love it for me. Like, I love it because I can see myself in those main female characters. Nothing about this do I relate to, but I've never felt so deeply. We are following our two main characters that are both musicians in New York City. They're in an orchestra. She plays the violin, he plays the cello. Guys, just look at it. Just look at it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we have Gwen and Xander. And so Xander, I think, is like a couple years older. Well known in also a band. So like he has like this widespread kind of audience that makes him a bit popular, as they say. And then Gwen is just playing in this orchestra in New York City, and he is also playing in this orchestra from New York City. So they have a lot of interactions there, but from the get-go there's this attraction, and he does not hide it. And I think that is something that I find so attractive about this book and about this man. Like, he is not shying away from the fact that he is attracted to her. Now, does he communicate the best and the kindest about that? No, I mean, he has his own way, but think about it. If you've ever played sports and the coach is picking on you and saying like, all like critiquing you a lot, it feels. And you're like, well, everyone else is also doing the same mistake, and I don't see you calling them out. And it's because you're a great athlete and they believe you can do better. They know you can do better, and so they want to push you to do that. That's how this felt. I felt that, rather than like, he's picking on her or he's being mean. Like, it felt just, it made sense. And I just love them. And the music and the scenes. Please pick up this book if you have not already. So now we're getting into our fantasy romance. I had a fantasy kick this year. I read so much fantasy, but only a few made it to 5 stars. First up, we have Powerless. I did my reading vlog on this. I tabbed the heck out of this book. say what you want to say. I loved it. I ate it up. I loved the banter. I loved all of the dialogue we had. Was so bingeable and easy and made me giddy and made me gasp. It was so fun. I laughed, I cried, I did all of the things, and I just loved them. Now, will I, spoiler alert, say that I did not love the second book, Reckless? Correct. I'm really hoping for a comeback with Fearless to round out the trilogy. I also really loved the novella. I didn't give it 5 stars, but I really loved it, and I thought it was so perfect. It was like a 4.5. Like, I was shocked at how much I loved such a tiny little book that made me feel so many things. This world is fun. I'm excited to see how the trilogy ends. I guess I should say a little bit about it, huh? So, fantasy. We have Kai, we have Payton. In this world, there are the ordinaries that essentially don't have a magical ability that everyone else by the plague many years ago were granted. And so the king doesn't want the ordinaries essentially breeding with the elites to like dole down the powers as kids are born in generations. Like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. So the king has ordered every ordinary to be executed, banished, all the things. So we have our main female character, Payton, who is an ordinary passing by as a psychic. She's thrown into these trials. She's trying to make sure no one finds out that she's actually an ordinary. And then we have Kai, the prince. What is he called? It doesn't say what he's called, so I won't talk about it, I guess. But he's our main kind of like love interest, and he's a prince, very strong as well. And so that's our dynamic going into this. I'm very curious to see how this trilogy ends. Next up, I do not have the Wisteria book, but we have the Belladonna trilogy. It is a 5-star trilogy. We have Belladonna, and then we have Foxglove. I didn't know that I could be attracted to Death. Death is a character, and I love him. I am so attracted to him. It is absolutely embarrassing, but totally fine in the book community. So just starting off kind of with the first book, and that's kind of the only plot that I'll discuss a bit more, but we have our main character, Signa. I was like, I'm gonna say the wrong name. Signa. And she, since she was little, has always been able to kind of see death. If someone is going to die soon, she sees death, and she sees it kind of following her around. And then she also feels like, I'm the one killing people because like death follows me everywhere I go, kind of thing. But like, she's always been comfortable with this since she was little. Now she is essentially waiting to inherit her manor because all of her immediate family has died. And so in this process, she's staying with her cousins, and she's trying to solve this mystery because her cousin Blythe is sick, and she doesn't understand why, and nothing about it's making sense. And so she goes on kind of an adventure trying to figure out who, what, when, where, why, how. In the process, getting a little more one-on-one time with Death, getting a little more of that voice coming into her head. Death's voice in the audiobook, it just hits different. If you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't. I highly recommend the audiobook for this. I really love the mystery element of this. I really loved the discussion of life and death and fate, and it was just so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And so we have that continuation here. This is really following Signa, and then this is also following Signa, but you get a bit more of Blythe. And then Wisteria is really following Blythe, but you get also Signa. So you see the crossover, you see it. It's a fun continuation of this story into the second, into the third, and we have death, we have fate, we have all the beautiful things. Next up, I'm going to talk about Evergreen by Autumn Woods. This is on Kindle Unlimited, I believe, and I got it as an ARC, and I ate this book up. I read it, I believe, in January, but I remember the feeling more than anything. It was such a fun book. I don't know why people are not getting on this more and talking about this more. It is following, okay, to be frankly, I don't know the main characters' names. I cannot remember that right now, but you have our main female character who, she's like a hunter. She's like an assassin of sorts, But essentially, she's a hunter leading kind of her mini little army to just help feed people, to help just keep people alive, to kill dangerous animals, like all of this. And so she is in a forest. That is part, I think it's like kind of the forest kingdom, if you will. And there's other than like kind of kingdoms, kind of like earth, water, fire, all of that. And so the king of that forest, the forest king, dark, evil, people fear him. That's our two love things. He finds her in his territory, takes her captive. Now we're having to deal with that. There's a found family element. There's kind of this main plot line of like the kingdoms and the kingdoms kind of falling apart and like what's going on. And then you can see how a continuation of this is going to happen with how it ends. You get a conclusion with our main characters, but you see how other characters are going to be brought to the forefront in the next book, and you can see how the different kingdoms are kind of going to be at play and what is this overarching issue going on that's going to have to be solved in that kingdom. I kind of like to keep fantasy books relatively vague, so I kind of want you to go in as blind as you want to. You can look up more about it if you want, but that's the general vagueness. I loved it. It was spicy, but it was shorter as far as a fantasy book goes. Like I flew through it. It did not feel like a long book to me, but I felt like I got so much from our characters, and I felt like I got a completed story while also excited for more. Oh, it was just so well done. Then I have Fantasma by Kaylee Smith. I actually got to meet her, and this book is signed by her, which is just so crazy to me. How do you, goodness, like, isn't that so neat? But I love this book so much. It is the adult Caraval that we all needed. It has a sprinkle of belladonna in there. It is so perfect. It's blending so many books that I love into one. Like, are you kidding? Okay, if you read Caraval, then this is just gonna make sense to you. But if you don't, I'm gonna try my best here. So we have the Fantasma games. Literally says Fantasma only has 2 rules: stay alive and don't fall in love. Spoiler. So this is book 1, so it is going to be a series. I don't know if it's a trilogy or what it is, but we have Ophelia, and page 1, mother dies. Ophelia inherits this ability that all the women in her family get when like it's passed on generation to generation, right? And so she inherits that, and in that process they also inherit the mother's debt that no one knew about. So Ophelia and her sister also are like, okay, thanks mom. Not only have I inherited this ability that kind of makes me a freak in the community, you also gave us all this debt. What are we supposed to do? And so her sister takes matters into her own hands and is like, I'm going to enter Fantasma, because at the end the winner is granted a wish, and essentially you could use that wish to be like, I wish for no more debt. But Ophelia is like, my baby sister, my sweet baby sister, you idiot. She did it without her knowing, so now Ophelia is trying to track her down. She enters the games. She's trying to win, but also find her sister. First and foremost, she's like, where is my damn sister? Now we have our main male character that enters the chat, and he goes, I can help you. I can help you if you help me. He has no memory. He's a part of the games. He has no memory of why he's there, who he is, and so he believes that she can help him kind of unlock that mystery. And so that's where they team up, and she's like, listen, I don't trust you, but I don't really have a choice. So the whole time they are having to work together over and over again, building that connection or whatever, falling in love, and she's going through these different levels of Fantasma, and it is all about these dark things like fear and having to stand up for yourself and rely on yourself and compete in these very deathly games. It is such an amazing book and so well done. I loved it, and I am so excited for Enchantra to come out in 2025. We have our first 5-star book in Throne of Glass. I gave Queen of Shadows 5 stars. This just had the feeling for me. It did. Am I excited for an eventual reread of Throne of Glass to know like if those earlier books are gonna give me the 5-star? Yes. But this was the first one that I just knew. Like, the tabs are tabbing. I am so excited to finish this series and put out the second vlog for the Throne of Glass series, part 2 vlog. you get it. I loved it. I mean, you know Throne of Glass or you don't. I don't know. Queen of Shadows are on book like 4 or 5 now, right? Like, how can I talk about this? But just know that at this point in the story, I loved seeing a lot of our characters merge together in these different plot lines that we were following. I feel like in the previous book or two, and then in this, we got to see kind of things merge together, and I think that's what made this book so special to me. I read Throne of Secrets by Kerri Maniscalco. This is the second book following Throne of the Fallen. Now, Throne of the Fallen, I thought I gave 5 stars, but ultimately, I guess I'm glad I didn't, because I knew that Throne of Secrets was better than Throne of the Fallen, and I gave that one 5 stars. I ate this book up. You are following the Princes of Sin. So, Kerri Maniscalco also wrote The Kingdom of the Wicked, and I haven't read that yet, but I heard it was YA, book by book, getting more adult. This is just adult. You jump in, you are at adult. And so you're following Prince Envy in Throne of the Fallen, and this one you are following Prince Gluttony. And all of that indulgence, wow. Wow. I ate this book up. It was so good. It was honestly something that I anticipated to like less than the first book. So when I read this, and to my surprise, I loved it more. A shock to my system, but ultimately obviously made me very, very happy, because I love it when just a book surprises you. I was just like, okay, well, I don't know, like, we're introduced to a new prince, like, am I gonna like him? But I love it because you get to see glimpses of the other princes, and you can see how she is putting in these little Easter eggs to where you're gonna know when you get their book, like, oh, that's what that was about. That's who that was about. You know what I mean? Like, I love those little moments that authors put in books, knowing they have a bigger picture. I'm so excited for the 3rd book. I have no idea when it's coming out. I don't know who it's following. I don't know any of that, but I cannot wait to read it. The last book I have to talk about is The Unmaking of June Faroh by Adrienne Young. This book took me by surprise. I did not anticipate loving it as much as I did, because it was just so magical and out of my comfort zone. You are following June Faroh, who in her family, the women are known to go mad. They're known to just go a little cuckoo towards the end. And so they start to see things, they start to have these visions, like, you just know when it starts, right? And so June's grandmother, who takes care of her, has just passed away, and June is starting to see things. And so she's like, I thought I had a few more years before this started. So she's kind of having that fear, and so she is having to now go on this adventure, following her gut, following her heart, figuring out what is this curse, so to speak, that runs in this family. And it is so beautiful. Like, it is so beautiful. It really tugs at the heartstrings and just kind of makes you feel for June as she is discovering more, because the whole premise, I guess, additionally, of her following her madness and like what is this really, is she doesn't know what happened to her mom. Like, her mother disappeared, her mother left, but like, there's no kind of clue, like, what happened. And so after her grandmother passes, she finds a clue that gives her a bit more context to her mother's disappearance. And so she is following that amongst following, who am I? What is going on? What is this bloodline that I have been so blessedly birthed into? And I just loved it so much. So these are all the books that I gave 5 stars in 2024. Now you can expect another video very, very soon. It is going to be my 24 for 2024, and they are essentially 24 books that are not my 5 stars that I believe deserve the honorable mention. They deserve the shout out. They deserve the recommendation. I gave them anywhere from 4 to 4.75. I read so many great books this year, and I definitely want to share as many recommendations as I can with you. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.